All right, sweet.
What's going on, y'all? It is Bears over beers, though I'm going to give you all fair warning. Neither one of us is drinking beer tonight. We got to go stronger. We got to go heavier because what the hell was that? Okay. Oh, look, we all know what that was. Okay. This is it's exactly what we have been experiencing for decades now. This is nothing new, but seriously, WTF? Like, we're gonna do that plenty. But you know what? This is the first time Bryan and I have done a podcast before.
Yeah.
Great timing for this particular show. How you doing tonight?
Man, I'm doing about as good as I can be. Yeah, I got some things to say.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's interesting. It's interesting because, you know, as Bears fans, we are used to being heartbroken, right? Like we're used to it. And this year obviously started high hopes, high expectations. Last few weeks have really hit hard. But as Kyle Brandt shared this week, because of what we've been through, you know, the Packers game, it was kind of a numb feeling, you know, like there wasn't much left within me to pour out and feel. So in that sense, you know, it's not so bad, I guess.
You know, and I think that's actually a great way to lead this off. But first, before we do that, I want to know what you're drinking tonight.
So I have been consistent with some tasty brews all year so far. And given that we had the record-breaking consecutive loss in our series to the Packers, considering, you know, there were some. I love bourbon, huge bourbon guy, connoisseur even.
Gotcha.
So there's a, you know, it's a hard, but it's a tasty delight. You know, there were some positives to come away from Green Bay. So this here is a Woodford Reserve, which I love Woodford, but this is a double oaked batch, which I had not tried before.
All right.
I cracked it open just before the show, and I shared a drink with my lovely wife. And I've got myself a rocks glass right now. I'm gonna pour a proper one and talk all the good, the bad, the ugly, and in between with my guy Khari. I'm looking forward to joining you, man. What do you got tonight?
You know what? That is so wonderfully wholesome. I have this right here, which is Uncle Nearest.
Okay.
1848. Apparently, this is the guy that taught Jack Daniels how to brew, but he doesn't necessarily, you know, how to you know, do whiskey, but he didn't you know, get a lot of the credit for it back then. But now Uncle Nearest is becoming, you know, they're raising his brand, raising his name out of the annals of history. I love it personally. And so I'm having some Uncle Nearest tonight, and I'm getting it in the special Lord of the Rings Middle Earth themed.
Love it.
A glass right here. Oh, look at that, Middle Earth right there. Bam. It is my 34th birthday today.
What?
And I actually just got this when we got home.
What?
So there we go.
Bro, cheers. Happy birthday. It is an honor and a privilege.
Appreciate you.
Got a fresh cut too. Looking good. Looking clean.
Hey, listen, you know, I had the hair going long for quite a while. And I mean, I personally like it. I like having it go, but there comes a point where you just know it's time for a haircut.
Yeah.
Where it's like you get enough of the wife being like, when you're gonna cut your hair, you want to do something with your hair today? You can do something with your hair today. I'm like, no, I'm just gonna let it be wild. Yeah. And so now I don't got to do anything with it. Don't got to worry about it. So you know what? All in all, solid day, good stuff, except for what we've got to talk about. So you know what? We might as well just go ahead and get into it because look, I'm kind of with you. I don't really know what else there is to feel at this point. You know what I mean? Like we have seen just about every manner of heartbreaking Bears loss to the Green Bay Packers, to the point where honestly, this doesn't register
Right.
Like, for example, it doesn't register in the same way as like the 2013 loss where it's 4th and 9 or whatever it is, 4th and 8, and Julius Peppers is coming scot-free, and you're like, yes, this is it, got him. And then there's a blown coverage and you lose. And it's like, that was just, are you kidding? Yeah. For real? And it's not like,
might have been the worst.
Yeah, and it's not the NFC Championship game lost. But this was just like, it was almost so mundane.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh yeah, like this is going to be it. Caleb Williams is going to do it after 3 weeks of crap, terrible offensive football, just completely hopeless. And I'm coming into this game thinking, Thomas Brown, like, I mean, I've heard, like, I like the energy he's bringing. I like the idea that there might be a new voice here. Cool. I just don't believe it's going to make that big of a difference. It made a difference.
Yep.
And Caleb Williams looks like he's about to do it in his first start against the Packers. He deserved it. He played well enough to do it, and they blocked the kick. And here's, of course. And
no, I think that was the hardest part is, we kind of all expected it. But
something was going to go wrong, right?
Right.
But
like even when it came down to kick, lining up for the kick, like I was like, okay, this is makeable. Like but still, like in the back of my head, I'm like, he's going to miss. Like something's going to happen because we're accustomed to it. But because they let down Caleb in the fashion that they did, he's a rookie. It's his first taste of this, and he willed his way back, the whole team, back into that game, and just let him down. And I don't blame it on Cairo. I don't blame it on Daly, the long snapper. I blame it on Flus. And right or wrong, he's proven to be like one of the historical worst coaches when it comes to close games. And so that was, I think, disappointing. Is Caleb's our future, and it's a bright future. You can't be a Bears fan and not be optimistic about the quarterback position and a lot of the young talent on our team. And they, like Rome, like the last couple throws to Rome, oh my gosh, just ball playmakers. And to let them down was the toughest part. But yeah, I mean, we showed some improvement. I was actually, I think, most surprised, Khari, about how our offensive line held up, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Obviously those 2 sacks in the last drive, that
succession,
changed, right. That changed things. But for the most part, especially after Bates went down, the way that we were still able to hold up in pass pro running game was pretty tough sledding all game. We willed our way to a good rush total, and our guys showed up for that. But I didn't expect. I thought we were going to get dominated up front, and we didn't. So that was a pleasant surprise. But yeah, I got more takeaways too. But at the end of the day, I mean, I got in a little bit of a Twitter back and forth with a Packers fan today about Jordan Love and them saying that he's a great deep ball thrower, and I was like, bro, he's lucky. He is lucky, and he got lucky against us, and that's all I was talking about. And I do think he's gotten lucky in other games too.
Oh yeah,
but to his credit, he throws it up. So.
And that's the interesting thing, man, because I think nowadays there's so much more advantage to just chucking the ball down the field.
Yeah.
At least not when you're doing it into like double and triple coverage all the time. But if it's a one-on-one and you trust your receiver, it's a lot more advantageous, I think, to let it fly, especially if you underthrow it. You should purposely underthrow your deep balls and get pass interference penalties. But you know what? I'm curious now because we're talking about Jordan Love being a great deep ball thrower. I will say, you go on Pro Football Focus, Jordan Love is the 11th highest graded deep ball passer in the league at 90.8. With a 20.4 big time throw percentage. I think though, like I will say that about Jordan Love, it's like I feel like a lot of that's the result, right? The result of the play ends up being good. And I feel like there are times where you're just like, really, you're throwing that, but hey, if it works out, it works out.
Right.
Now, I want to get into the Matt Eberflus stuff a little bit later because it's honestly astounding how bad they continue to be in late game situations. And at some point, like you could talk about obviously the players needing to execute in key situations. But I mean, at some point, this has got to be at least a bit of a reflection of coaching. With Caleb Williams, right? 3 really miserable games in a row, I would say. And I would also like to point out that while he has not thrown an interception in the last 4 games, you'll take that. He has not thrown a touchdown in any of the last 4 games. But that being said, I think the game that he just played against the Packers, I mean, the types of plays that he was making in the clutch and the way that he was able to navigate pressure this time around compared to what he did previously, clearly, but like by miles, the best game that he's played since the bye. And that's the kind of thing, like, you want to see progress. I think it's tough with young quarterbacks. We all want to see linear growth, and we want to see like you start from here and you end up here and you don't have any bad in between. That's not how this works. And obviously we know that Caleb Williams has not been playing with the best deck of cards in terms of coaching, especially. And he got 1 week of solid coaching where they used all of his weapons. And it's like, oh, this looks kind of nice. And I think there's something to take away from that it's going to get better from there. But I think there is this part in me that says, you know what? Caleb Williams played well and he deserved to win that game. I'm not going to be that mad about it. I mean, I think that at this point in time, with Chicago Bears being 4-6 now, you can basically stick a fork in this. It's done. There's unless they win out, like we're not getting playoffs this year. And you know what? That is what it is. So now you're looking for Caleb Williams improvement, because at this point, getting your hopes up for 6 straight wins with the schedule that they've got is just it's a little bit rich for my blood. Yeah. But you know what? If you want to take something away from this game that's positive, the offense was positive. Caleb Williams was positive. Let's just do what we can to take the good from this.
For sure. And everybody's been on this Ben Johnson bandwagon, rightfully so. He is my dream scenario option for us. But I'll tell you this, man, if Thomas Brown can continue to put Caleb and that offense in positions to make plays and maximize their talent and put up points, bro, I would not be upset if he ended up taking over the head coaching job. If he could do it the rest of the year, right? Like, now there's some film on him. And like you said, this is the toughest part of the schedule, which makes it even more impressive, especially this week. And I know we'll get to that with Flores and his defense, what they bring. But man, I was very, very happy with that, because Caleb has had a rough stretch, and you alluded to that. But a lot of that, I feel, was due to the play calling. And I think it illuminated as much watching Thomas Brown and how he orchestrated that game. I'm excited about Thomas Brown and what he's doing. It's not rocket science. We talked about this last week, me and Ryan. It's get the ball to your playmakers and put them in positions to succeed. Yeah, it's such a novel idea, right? Well, we haven't seen it in Chi-Town for quite some time. And Thomas Brown did that. And we all saw the clip of him, getting amped up when Roshan scored that touchdown. I mean, who doesn't love, that sort of thing? And I do think that the perspective of him, and the vantage point being in the booth as opposed to on the sideline, I think that adds an interesting element to it. But I'm excited about Thomas Brown, and he could easily climb up my head coaching ranks if he keeps it up.
I feel like it's hard for me to get that far. Though I gotta say, he very much outperformed my expectations. Because part of me is also thinking of like, okay, he had half a year or so kind of running the show for the Panthers last year. Then again, the Panthers were completely devoid of talent. Completely devoid of talent. So it's not entirely fair to hold that part against him. Yeah, and they played some pretty competitive games towards the end of the season, despite being completely devoid of talent. And so I think I want to see more sample size. I feel like I'm never the kind of person who wants to get just completely locked on to one guy, because I feel like we've seen what that looks like when we're just like, we got to have this head coach. Yeah. And then, maybe they don't get him. He goes someplace else and he does fine for a couple of years. And then he craps the bed and then he's gone. Then again, it's just the guy that the Bears pick doesn't do much better either. It's like that's the main problem. Is whoever the Bears pick isn't good.
Right.
So, I mean, I feel like the idea of Ben Johnson is the one that, look, if he wants to come here and you see that the track record that he's had turning Jared Goff, who I think he was never a bad quarterback when he was with the Rams, but I always viewed him as just like, okay, whatever. And turning him into a good quarterback, an actually good NFL quarterback, has been impressive to me. And, being in Detroit and being under Dan Campbell and seeing the way that he does things. But I feel like what we often forget when it comes to head coaching, especially when we're just like, we got to have an offensive head coach. Play calling is not the only thing that you do.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Great point. Offense and play calling is not the only thing you do, even when you're an offensive head coach.
We've seen it.
You need to be able to lead. I mean, how many offensive coordinators have we seen? Really good offensive coordinators get a head coaching job and be bad at it. Mark Trestman. I've been in New England in Boston for a while, and I've covered the New England Patriots up close, and I've seen Josh McDaniels be a just great offensive coordinator for years and years. And it wasn't just with Brady, right? When Brady leaves, he constructs an offense out of thin air and creates for Cam Newton. And they go 7-9 with a team that honestly was like a 4 or 5 win team. And they squeezed 7 wins out of that. And then Mac Jones comes around in his rookie year and they win 10 games with Mac Jones. Look, 10 games with Mac Jones. And the defense was kind of the catalyst to that, but Mac Jones.
Right?
We've seen what he looks like now. He sucks. And Josh McDaniels got the best version out of him. But twice he went to go be a head coach and it went terribly. He didn't last 2 years at either one of those gigs. He's just not an NFL head coach. And Arthur Smith, another guy, right? Really good offensive coordinator in Tennessee, gets a head coaching job in Atlanta. He's no longer the head coach in Atlanta because they consistently underachieved and he didn't get the most out of his players. And then he goes to Pittsburgh and he's got Justin Fields and Russell Wilson and they're 8-2, right? So it's possible to be a really good offensive coordinator and a bad head coach. I think that there does need to be an element of, if you think Thomas Brown is a really good head coach, if he's a good offensive coach, but he's a really good head coach, a really good leader, a really good organizer, a really good communicator, you have to consider that. And I would like to see how Ben Johnson interviews, and if he blows everybody away, then okay, like Ben Johnson, write him a blank check, do whatever. But I don't want to dismiss the very idea of Thomas Brown, because I think the more I'm around, the NFL and the more I see what head coaches look like, it's really not just about how they call plays and how they scheme and how they time manage. Because even the really good ones, Mike Tomlin makes time management mistakes or weird personnel decisions that people don't always understand. But there's a reason that team never has losing seasons. is because they are always playing behind that dude and they're always buying into the message, right? And I think that's got to say something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and that's a huge consideration for the Ben Johnson, and there's absolutely an argument to be made about bringing in the right guy to lead a team. Like a Bill Belichick, which I've seen thrown out there, or
See, that one,
Vrabel.
I'm a little bit too close to the Bill Belichick one.
Yeah,
I don't want to see that.
yeah,
I don't want to see that at all.
I don't either personally, but I see the argument in everything you're saying.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be able to lead a team and manage a clock and get both sides to play up to their caliber and all the things. I do get that, and I think it'll be interesting, to see how it pans out. But Thomas Brown, assistant head coach with the Rams under McVay, and and even I think today, Tom Pelissero on NFL Network laid out his young potential head coach candidates, and Thomas Brown was on it. He's got that respect league wide to be considered for that sort of thing. And I think for me, it keeps coming back to, the most important thing for our next head coach, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people share this, is, as we talked about earlier, Caleb's development. And so I would almost sacrifice some of that where they can learn on I would take an Eberflus if he was an elite quarterback and offensive guy, because I feel like in this league, and that's a statement right there I've never even thought of before, but in this league, you got to score points, and our quarterback's the most important position, not just in football, in my opinion, in all of sports. So that to me is paramount. And if you get a guy like Vrabel in or Belichick, who's going to be the offensive coordinator? And so that's just, it's too much to risk. But to your point, I think I'm not ready to anoint Thomas Brown the head coach, but if he can keep it up, win that respect, because think about it, if he ends up winning some games, stringing together some wins with this schedule in this division, he's going to get the team's respect. And he'll have the inside track at I think the head coaching job. It'll be interesting to see. But I was very impressed with what he did for our team on Sunday.
Big time. And here's the other thing I'll say real quickly, and then we'll take a quick break. I think in theory, you want an offensive head coach with your young quarterback, and I'm totally with that. But Sean McDermott is not an offensive minded coach, and he has found the right people repeatedly to get the best out of Josh Allen, a guy who was 1,000% raw materials, no refinement when he came to the league, zero refinement, and has got him out there playing like Superman and enabling him to be that kind of player. Yeah. Mike Tomlin is, well, he might not be the best example of this all the time, because his quarterback.
He's had Big Ben the majority of his career, but
and his quarterback development outside of Ben Roethlisberger has not been great. But again, look at this year, right? Where you got Arthur Smith, who's doing a good job, and getting the most out of two quarterbacks nobody wanted. Right. Absolutely no one wanted any part of, and they're one of the best teams in the league right now. And so I guess my point with that is I feel like I'd be surprised if it happened, but hiring a defensive-minded, DeMeco Ryans over in Houston, right? They drafted, they hired him, drafted CJ Stroud to go with him, and CJ Stroud has taken a bit of a step back, but he's still a really good quarterback. Right. And that's a playoff caliber team.
Oh, for sure.
And I think if you get the right guy, whether he's an offensive or defensive guy, who knows the right people and the right way to go about it. And I think some of that goes with having the right mentality to win football games, which we are going to talk about with Matt Eberflus here in a second. But having the right mentality, not just to compete, but to win games, that matters, right? So I guess like my thing is, we're going to do this because this is just what we do, but we're going to get caught up in the idea of we got to have an offensive-minded head coach. I would like an offensive-minded head coach. I think that's probably the best avenue on paper, certainly for Caleb Williams. But if there is a guy who's just a better coach and he's got a better plan and you think that it's sustainable, I am good with going with that.
Yeah. And I could be sold. I think, Khari, I think like we said earlier, the issue is we have repeatedly made the wrong choices. Like
every time, whether it's offensive, defense, it was always
it doesn't matter. So at the end of the day, you could pick one of my favorites, David Tobe, special teams coordinator. Bring him in here or anyone else that we haven't heard of before. If they get this team winning and Caleb developing, nobody's going to complain. And it's their job to do it. And so it's one of those things. I'm totally with you. I think Mike Vrabel, it would be my choice if we went that route. He just kind of seems like one of those types of in that same vein of a D'Amico Ryans or a McDermott. But Tobe is another one I'd be legit interested in. But the thing I love about Ben Johnson, and maybe we'll talk about this more next week when it's a Lions pod, but he's in the division already. He knows all the teams we play, has schemed against them, and you're also simultaneously weakening an opponent. So it makes too much sense there for me. But I'm with you, man. At the end of the day, if we get somebody that can help us win games, I'm happy.
Yeah, and it's just like whatever it is, just don't be the one who don't be the guys again that take Mark Trestman over Bruce Arians.
Well,
right?
I mean, how glaring of a example did we just get last weekend? We totally squandered a last-minute opportunity down the field to kick a field goal to win the game. And what did, we talk about who is the guy each offseason. There's the guy last offseason for us, everybody wanted, was Jim Harbaugh. He was the guy. And what did he do the same weekend that we had this collapse against Green Bay and went 0-5 for Eberflus in his career, 11 straight victories for the Packers, longest in the franchise history. Meanwhile, Harbaugh is playing to win the game and ends it with his foot on the throat with a last-second touchdown run, trying to get more yards. And so it's stuff like that as Bears fans we see, and it gets publicized. Okay, this is who we could have had, and this is who we have. And clearly you made the wrong choice. And he's not the only one. There are other guys too. And that's the most frustrating thing about it.
All right, we need to take a break real quick to thank our sponsors. It's like hopefully we can decompress with a nice long ad read here. Underdog Fantasy is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. With over 5 million happy players and $2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all your favorite athletes' performances. Compete against other players just by selecting higher or lower on 2 or more player stats, and you could win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog. So look, one thing that you can do, which I've done quite a few times, just pick a player. So let's say you think DJ Moore is going to rack up more than 0.5 touchdowns next week, right? Then go ahead and say DeAndre Swift is going to get, 70.5, it's like 71, rushing yards or whatever. Look, just go ahead, grab some entries, throw in some cash prizes all football season long, super easy. One thing that you can do that I think is pretty cool, vulture protection. You can select a designated running back to score in your pick'em. And look, if they get vultured, so say, Roshan Johnson comes in and snipes, DeAndre Swift's touchdown, they rescue your entry. Look, we all know how frustrating that is when that happens. Completely understand. I actually have been getting really into it recently with Underdog. And one of the cool things about it is, look, if you go with the double flex option, so say you pick up to 6 players with your bets, which I like to do those. I like to rack them all up and see what I can do. Even if you lose twice, and so you only get 4 out of 6, you still win a little bit of money. Now that can be how they get you. But you know what? I actually have had some pretty good luck recently. I recommend it. It's pretty good stuff. Now, download the app today. Use the code CITY to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Repeat the. Oh yeah, so it's. I was about to screw up the ad read. Actually, I already did. But look, make sure you select higher or lower on your favorite players, and look, make that higher or lower. Okay, not the other thing. So, must be 18 or older, 19 or older in Alabama. Nebraska, 19 or older in Colorado for some games, and 21 or older in Massachusetts or Arizona. I'm in Massachusetts myself. And make sure you're present in the state where Underdog Fantasy operates. It'll get after you if you're not. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Make sure you call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org, or in Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP, or text NEXT STEP to 53342. Gonna have to practice that ad read for next time. Sorry for butchering it so badly, but the bottom line is, do your thing with Underdog Fantasy. All right, now let's get back to it. Whew. Not as long as some of the other ad reads, but okay. We've hinted at this a number of times. Why can't this team win close games under Matt Eberflus?
Man.
I mean, I think I've seen at this point, the Bears have lost 8 games under Matt Eberflus in which they had an 80% chance to win or better. I mean, if that is the if there's a definition or a way to define not clutch, that is it.
Yeah.
You cannot trust this team to finish games under Matt Eberflus. And again, I think it's the little things like what just came up after the game where Cairo Santos is like, yeah, I mean, I don't mind. I'll kick from anywhere, but I would prefer to kick from the right hash.
Right.
That's something you know. You know that. I'm sure Richard Hightower has communicated that exact thing. And you run the ball in a way that does not get the ball over to the right hash, which is something you see other teams do all the time, whether it's running the football, whether it's kneeling the football. Also, by the way, you don't want to try to get the ball just a little bit closer.
Yeah.
Right? Just a little bit. And that goes back to you're not trying to win the game. You're just trying not to lose it. And when you try not to lose the game, you lose it.
Yeah. And I think that's it. I think he's been way too conservative and just, scared in the closing moments. And there were some discussions on WCG this week amongst the commenters, which shout out to all you guys, make it the best place in the world, at least to talk Bears. But he's actually proven to be pretty bold early in the game when it comes to fourth downs and going for things. But it's at the end of the game, and it's one thing to do it once or twice, but he has repeatedly made the same type of mistakes, Kyrie. And like the thing that bothers me the most is when the reporters, I think it was Nicholas Moreno, asked him, did you want to get it over to the other hash for Cairo? He's like, no, we liked where we're at. He doubles down on his mistake continuously. Like, he doesn't show the ability to learn. And it's one thing to say it to the press. I don't care as much what you say. It's a lot of coach speak when you talk to the press. Yeah. But what you're putting on tape is proving that he's not learning. Like, we just had this fourth quarter meltdown in DC a few weeks back, and he's doing the same BS. And that's why ultimately, man, I'm just out on him, because he is not like, I think he seems like a great guy and a great coach, a player's coach. And I think he means what he says, and he says what he means, and he's transparent to the players, and they like him. They respond to him. But at the end of the day, like you said, the fourth quarter collapses are just, it's just too glaring of a mistake, and his inability to adjust. I'm curious to see if he does anything different in these last few weeks. Now that I feel like he's starting to feel the heat, is he going to turn it up and be a little bit more bold now that he might be gone? I doubt it because he hasn't shown that yet, but I think it'd be good for him, but he has been, just too scared to put his foot down and put the team away that he's playing against. And does that come down to lack of faith in his players? He's said some stuff that makes you feel like it. Oh, they could fumble, we could lose yardage. I mean, with that mentality, yeah. And that's why you lose all these games.
Yep. And I think that's one of the major differentiating things between him and the likes of Dan Campbell, who will risk anything at any time. With fake punts from his 20, right? It's just the most outlandish things where you're just like, that makes no sense. Oh. But he will do it at any time because he believes his team is going to pull it off.
You know how many flea flickers I've seen this year from the Lions? I've seen more of those type of plays from the Lions this year than probably the last 10 years combined. And yeah, Ben Johnson's calling the plays, but do you think he would call those plays if Dan Campbell wasn't like, hell yeah, let's do it, Ben?
Literally, he's listening. He's got to be listening on the headset as Ben Johnson's calling these plays. Like, oh yeah, I can't wait. And they're doing hook and ladders. They're doing toss back passes. They're just doing whatever because they know that they are good enough to pull it off. Right. Jim Harbaugh's over here going for the throat and just being like, oh yeah, go up in the end zone. I don't care. For me, I'm literally thinking, man, if I were J.K. Dobbins, I would have gone down. And they're just like, we don't care.
Yeah.
We're good. We're going to stop him anyway. It doesn't matter. Right. And I think there's just the sphincter clearly gets tight with Matt Eberflus. And they start. I think, and it's in the players' heads. To me, I think it's clearly in their heads where they start thinking like, "Man, we're going to screw it up and we're going to lose this time, aren't we?" Right? Or it's just like, "What are we going to do this time?" Like, "Oh my God, they called this play in this situation, and then it doesn't work out." And they're like, So when they ask us about this after the game, I'm gonna make it real clear. That wasn't my call. That was his call.
Yeah.
And Eberflus gonna be like, well, if you just run my call right, it would have been fine. And again, it's a crappy culture. Yeah. It really is. No, it's a crappy spot to be in. But in the end, if you just put that level of faith in your players and said it publicly, where it's just like, you know what, look, and yeah, I think under pressure, he'll be like, okay, fine, it's on me, right? It all starts with me. But if you were like that from the beginning, if you just rolled the dice and you said, hey, look, you know what? I thought we were gonna get that fourth down right there, or I thought that blitz was gonna get home. And hey, I was just wrong, right? How many times have you seen Dan Campbell do that? Just being like, look, I didn't put my players in a good position to succeed, or hey, you know what? I just believed that we were going to be able to make this call work, and it didn't. I was wrong. I screwed up. If you could just have done that, people wouldn't despise you as much as they do. But again, it's part of it. It's the ineptitude and the prideful doubling down.
Right. No, 100%, man. You just nailed it. I mean, yeah, it's maddening, and the thing that like the coaches and even the players don't understand about the Chicago Bears, that the fans have seen years and years and years now, is we've seen this before. Man, it's just, and that's the most frustrating thing is nobody wants to start over again. Nobody wants to do it. We want Flus to be the guy. And he's just, showing signs after one another that he's not. And man, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like you get tired of it. And again, I think it's a pastime that fans get into at a certain point where it's just like, yeah, we're going to go beat up on the coach, right? And it's like, this coach sucks. You don't want to do this all the time. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to feel like this anymore about Matt Eberflus. It's like, I'm sure he's like, I've like seen Matt Eberflus like at the combine. It's just like a,
nice,
chill, normal dude, right? It's like he doesn't come off like a terrible guy or anything. Right. It's just that like you're not an NFL head coach.
Right.
I don't want you as the head coach of the Chicago Bears anymore. Yeah. Like at this point, it's not personal. But the thing is, it's like you don't want this anymore.
What would it take? Is there anything? Let me ask you this way: is there anything he could do this season? Nothing. Not a thing.
I'm done.
Not even if he won out?
I can't even entertain that because they're not going to win out. It's impossible. It's impossible.
Suspend your imagination for a bit. And if they did win out, would you consider him being the head coach moving forward?
If they by some miracle won out, I still then need to see, okay, you won out. What are we doing in the playoffs then?
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I can't even if they ended up 10-7, right? Or well, I guess in this case it would be 11-6, right?
Right.
It's like, well, I got to see what happens after that. And then it's like, okay, if they lost in the playoffs, and I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, well, let's see what, like a first round exit. Okay, well, let's see what that looked like. Was it bad? Did you get out coached?
Right.
And then we'll have a discussion. We'll talk about it. I don't like it might not necessarily be you get fired like immediately kind of thing, but I feel like you still, because ultimately you still have to think about the person who is now the most important person in your franchise. It's not Matt Eberflus, it's Caleb Williams.
Right.
What's best for Caleb Williams?
Absolutely.
And I think that's the part where I would still veer, like, I just don't know that that's the best choice. But I think the thing that's so difficult for me with that, and I do appreciate the thought exercise, like suspend your belief, think about it for a second, go through the scenarios, right? To me, this is an unserious football team until he is gone, because he's an unserious head coach.
Yeah.
But if they actually won out with this schedule,
right,
that would require me to take him more seriously than I am taking him right now.
Right.
Because winning out with this particular schedule on the back end is no joke. So you know what? I accept that.
And it would have to mean Caleb is doing well and progressing. You couldn't do it without him. We couldn't do it on the heels of our defense.
Yeah, because we've seen the defense play well and hold opponents to 15 points, 16 points, or whatever, and you still lose. We've seen that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, and I think too at the same time it would require him to learn from some of these mistakes. I don't think it's going to happen, but if it did happen, I would be open to him staying, and I'm not right now. I'm nowhere near that right now. So it's just a fun exercise. It was posed. But
I mean, why not? Look, we're just doing our thing. We're getting hot off the juice right now. I mean, we gotta have some fun with it.
Which, by the way, last week I had brought, I think it was last week, I brought some beers back. I went with the family to a Renaissance fair. We're big into medieval, so you got the Lord of the Rings glass right now, rocks glass. It made me think of that. So right up there with you. I love it. Again, man, I'm just honored to be a part of your birthday, bro. Cheers. Hey. 34 years. 34, bro.
Hey, right, I got one. So I don't have that version. I got like the throwback, version. But look, we got the same number. What I had a Devin Hester back in the day. I think that one's in mothball somewhere. But that was my favorite player, is Devin Hester.
Oh yeah.
Always and forever.
And we wasted his celebration at halftime too.
Man.
Yeah, I know it. Sorry to bring it up.
Yeah, but we mentioned Caleb Williams. I want to talk about where Caleb Williams is now and how we're feeling about him. And part of that is I read on ESPN Plus an article by Ben Solak. Y'all probably heard of him around the way, Pro Football Focus, The Ringer, now with ESPN, and really goes in deep on quarterbacks. And he did a very detailed analysis of Caleb Williams and gave him a C+ for this season so far. Again, pointing out how well he played in this last game, his heater that he got on right before the bye, as well as some of the struggles that he's been through after that and in his first couple of games, says it all averages out to about a C+. That feels fair to me. I might even go with a C. I think the plus makes sense, I think, when you think about some of the factors that don't have as much to do with him. But I think for his actual play, I'd probably go with a C. What do you think? What would you grade Caleb Williams out at right now?
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys. I think a C is a fair grade for Caleb. I think the thing that I have been a little bit more surprised by is his accuracy issues. And I thought maybe it was going to be an early season thing and maybe just like to start games, and it has lingered throughout, and he's missed receivers consistently throughout the season. I think if you were to take his same, even with Waldron, the same issues with the protection and him letting up sacks and all that, if you keep everything the same except for he's been able to connect on, half of the throws that he's just blatantly missed, I think it'd be easily a B+, easily.
Yeah.
If not higher. So the accuracy has been a concern. Now, granted, you got flying bullets, coming across your way that are, above and beyond anything he's seen at this point. And shoot, we're going to talk about that here in a minute too with the Vikings defense. But yeah, I think it's a fair grade, and I'm still excited for what he's going to be. I think he's going to end up at least a B this season, but I think a C right now, C+ is very fair for what we've seen so far.
Yes, I think so. I have been frustrated, I think, and I think in the first couple of games, I have given Caleb Williams a lot of grace, and I think he deserves a lot of grace. I actually wrote before the season started, like when it became very obvious, right? Like he was going to be the guy, right? When the season ended, there's all talk about, they could keep Justin Fields. They could do that. Like, no, he was clearly going to be the pick. They were going to move on. They were going to go about things this way. And there were people who were already lining up trying to be like, oh yeah, well, they better make the playoffs now or else it was a mistake. And it's just like, no. We're still talking about a rookie quarterback here. Right. This is a different level of football. He's not playing, Colorado State or whoever it is that he was going to be playing. Right. This isn't no Boise State, Pac-12 late at night, whatever.
Right.
Like this. And you don't have the excuse anymore of having, to make all kind of crazy plays and score 50 points a game because your defense is terrible. Your defense is good. You're gonna have to adjust to learn how to live to fight another play. I think Caleb has shown a lot of intelligence. I think that I think some of it is like whether it's just too amped or whether he's got some footwork issues he's got to clean up, or maybe he needs to do a better job of giving himself better throwing lanes. I do wonder about his size just a little, right? Yeah. And if him needing to buy a little bit more space to get the ball around guys is kind of part of it. And he's humming it into spots that he doesn't need to hum it as much. He's got the ability to throw touch passes, which obviously we saw at the end of this last game with the throw to Rome, which was just like, yeah.
And Cole, and that throw to Cole.
Yeah.
Like, seeing that,
my God, yeah, layering it right over the underneath defender. Gosh. I mean, that's it's perfection. You can't do it any better than that. Like, Caleb can do that. He can make any throw that you want from pretty much any platform you want. And so it has been a bit concerning to see him be one of the least, coming into last game, one of the least accurate quarterbacks in the league in terms of completion percentage. I think the stuff with him holding on to the ball, I mean, generally, I think his time to throw hasn't been that bad for the most part, but there's still some of those plays where you're just like, okay, look, I know the protection could be better. I know nobody's open, but that ball needs to get out of your hand.
Right.
And it needs to get out of your hands.
Right.
Stop standing back there. Get your ass moving, right? Yeah. And he did this last game. And I think some of that was just coaching.
Exactly. Coordinator.
And again, so I'll do this, right? So again, I'm in Boston. I've been watching a lot of Drake May. A lot of people were like, he's going to get killed behind this offensive line. It's a terrible idea to play him this year when they put him in. And I kept on trying to tell people, like, Drake May is not the kind of guy that's going to mess around back there, right? He's going to scan his reads, and if it's not there, he's out. He's running, right? He's not going to stay back there and let you kill him. You got to get to him fast if you're going to get to him.
He's a big boy, too.
And that has been basically the way it's played out.
Yeah.
If you're sacking him, usually it's a quick pressure, or maybe he drifts into it, but he's not going to sit up there and be like 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh goodness, what do I do? It's going to be 1, 2, 3. Oh, I'm out. Okay, that's the internal clock. I'm gone. And that's the kind of thing that they coached Drake May. You talk about the coordination, you talk about whatever. They have coached Drake May to be himself, the best version of himself that he can be in the NFL right now, and not asking him to get his ass kicked back there just for the sake of getting it kicked. And I feel like the way that they were coaching Caleb Williams as a pocket passer up until last week was just asking him to drop back, scan, and sack.
Right. Yeah. No, I there's a lot of truth to that. I am curious. Obviously Drake May didn't start the year. Brissett did. And I'm curious how much that played into it. Him being able to start his first game with a lot more confidence and comfortability in the offense, in the pocket with his teammates. I think that has something to do with it.
I actually think, and this is something that, look, the Bears knew they were going to have Caleb Williams be the guy. They never wanted to do anything differently, but that's fine. That's fine. He's a number 1 overall pick.
Right.
There hasn't been a number 1 overall pick that got redshirted for a year since like Carson Palmer back in like 2003. That it does not happen.
Doesn't happen.
These guys play.
But what were you going to say? I think I know where you're going with this.
I think, though, that the way that the Patriots did this, where they sat him down, they sat Drake May, because look, a bunch of people were saying like, oh yeah, it's because he can't play. It's like, oh no. I don't think you understand what they're doing right now. They know he can play. They know Drake May could play right damn now, but they sat him on the bench and said, look, watch Jacoby Brissett on game day. Watch the way he does things and soak it all in. Watch the operation. And then in practice, they were giving him, and they were open about it, they were giving him 30% of the reps at practice. Yeah. So Jacoby Brissett was the starting quarterback, but they were actively preparing Drake May to play.
So what do you think about Chicago?
Well, I think that it's fine to be in a situation where it's like he's the number 1 overall pick. He's going to play cool, right? And you're just going to go that way. But you're basically putting it on him, the entire way to take his lumps. And you're saying you're going to take your lumps with how he's going to play and the mistakes he's going to make. But as we've seen with the Chicago Bears and with this regime in particular, with Matt Eberflus, they don't necessarily let quarterbacks be themselves. Yeah. If you're gonna have Caleb Williams or Drake May playing, you gotta let them go play like Caleb Williams and Drake May, not play like a veteran quarterback, because they're not a veteran quarterback, and they're not a guy who's gonna sit back there and just go and do straight dropbacks
Right.
30 times a game and get the ball out in 2.3 seconds. That's not how it is. And so I think that's the thing. They did the fundamental stuff with Drake May. They worked on his footwork. They worked on the way he did his reads. But in the end, they were like, we're getting ready for you to play like you.
Right.
In the NFL. And I don't think the Bears have done a good job of that with Caleb Williams at all.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think they did. And it's fascinating to consider what could have been with Thomas Brown calling plays from the beginning. What could have been, because how much of that was the play calls not putting him in position. And so, yeah, I'm happy for Drake May. And I'm excited for Caleb and having a play caller that's going to let him be him a little bit more. Did you see his press conference today? It's fascinating that they asked him if Thomas Brown encouraged him to run more. He was like, no, he didn't. He got the plays in quicker. And I think it was just him being able to understand what's in front of him and dissect the plays quicker and then make that decision quicker to take off and run because he knows what to look for.
Yeah, I think that was the real interesting one where he's just like, look, everything, like as soon as like the play happened, the last play happened, he had the next play queued up and ready to go. And I think again, when you're talking about young quarterbacks, especially rookies,
right,
if the operation is too slow, then there's like a level of panic that sits in. There's a level of unpreparedness, and then you're like, oh my God, I got to read all this. I got to read this. I got to read this. Whereas like, okay, the play's in and you've got, I don't know, 20 whole seconds to think about it, and you're getting everybody lined up and you're getting your motions and you see what, they're doing, and you can snap it whenever you want. Right. It's like you've had time to consider it. You're not rushing. And I feel like there was that element of like, I just don't feel prepared.
Right.
And again, when you're back there reading a play, right? When you got the play in and you're sitting there and you're like, okay, I've got man and stuff like that. You're going through the checklist, right? And I mean, you've already done this, right? But going into the game, but the checklist is there where it's like, okay, remember on this play, if he does this, I do this. If he does this, I do this. But if you're sitting up there with 10 seconds on the play clock and you're just getting to the line of scrimmage and you've got a bunch of motions and you've got a bunch of calls that you need to make and you need to decide if you need to kill the play, you don't got time to think about all that. So you bet you don't know if like, oh, if this guy drops down, I'm throwing it over his head, or like if the linebacker turns his head, I'm running. You don't got time to think about all that. And so I think that just little things like that, cleaning up the operation, can be helpful.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's going to be interesting to see, again, with tape out on Thomas Brown, how teams adjust to that if they do. But this week is going to be a huge test. And Flores, man, he gave Fields fits, and rightfully so. And I will say, I was very nervous about this matchup with Caleb and our offensive line. Very nervous until I saw how he did against the Packers and their blitz, and how Thomas Brown adjusted the play calls to suit his quarterback in that fashion. I don't know if you saw this, but the Packers blitzed Caleb 12 times. And on those blitzes, he had a 94.5 PFF grade, 92 pass grade. He was 8 for 10 for 87 yards and a 90% adjusted accuracy. And I mean, that right there, that gives me a lot of confidence and hope against this Vikings team. If he can get the ball out quick, you saw the stat, like he improved his time to throw by like a full second.
Mm-hmm.
It was tops in the league this past weekend. That's Thomas Brown. That's Thomas Brown giving him plays that he knows, and there's quick outlets and hot reads and him knowing what to expect and going for it. And obviously, like you talked about, having time to assess the defense, what they're what they're doing and maybe getting him in position for a better optimal play call. But because of what we saw against the Packers and the blitz, I think we could take it to the Vikings, man. I really do.
I mean, one would absolutely hope. Now, I think it's going to be as we saw last year, and I think they're totally different quarterbacks, right? I don't think you can necessarily compare the way that Caleb Williams would see something or the way that he would react to the way that Justin Fields would. I will say that between the first meeting with the Vikings and the second one, there was clearly a better game plan, and I think there was better overall play. But maybe you could take something from that. Obviously, I don't want to see them throw 12 screens or bubble screens or whatever it is. Like, don't do that again. I don't think they're going to do that. They're going to trust Caleb Williams to throw the football. But the trick with Flores, with Brian Flores, is knowing where the pressure is coming from.
Right.
Now, most likely, if you see that little umbrella thing that they're doing, where you got basically just 4 guys picket fencing about 10 yards off the ball, chances are the kitchen sink is coming. They are throwing the whole thing at you. It's not engage 8, but it's send 7. And so you got to be prepared. You got to know where your hots are, and you got to get the ball out of your hands. Now, again, that means though you get the ball out of your hands, they're coming to tackle you. Right. Now, the thing is, they will also happily do that and then turn it into something where they're only rushing 4 and you're getting bamboo. There are going to be some times where Caleb Williams is going to be fooled. Yeah. When he drops back to pass. They're not going to have this thing fully pegged because, I mean, he every single time, Brian Flores finds a way to throw new wrinkles into it. It's going to be an aggressive defense. I do have some concerns about how Thomas Brown is going to handle that in his first action as play caller for the Bears this year. I would have to look at whether or not he was, or where Carolina was in the schedule last year, assuming they played the Vikings. I'll have to have a look at that. But yeah, I don't know that I feel completely confident based off of 1 week, but I definitely feel better than I would have if it were Shane Waldron, because I had this absolutely penciled in as an ass whooping if he hadn't gotten fired.
No, and I would have felt just as apprehensive with Thomas Brown had I not seen him do what he did specifically with Caleb and the the quick game and the blitz, making it easy for Caleb. So, I mean, I'm not like, confident, but I'm much more.
Just real quick to add that in. So I was just clarifying that the Panthers did not play the Vikings last year. So they didn't have the whole NFC North. They just had the Bears, probably because of
the worst team in the North.
Yeah, like worst team records. So this will be Thomas Brown's first rodeo with this.
No, I love Flores. Shout out to Flores. I love him as a coach. I will say that, as far as, especially as a defensive coordinator. And, you talk about offensive coordinators that might not be good head coach. Flores is a genius defensive coordinator, and he wasn't the best head coach either. I'm interested to see what I'm hopeful that somebody hires him as a head coach, because I want him out of the North. He's such a good DC. But no, I'm real interested, man. I think Roschon, especially with Swift being hobbled by a groin injury, he was inactive in practice today. I think Roschon, his ability to pick up the blitz, get those tough yards, I think he's going to be key this week. So if we're talking about underdog fantasy, Roschon is probably a good one to buy on right now. I think he's going to be integral for the team. I think you talk about not wanting a quick screen game. We threw too many screens with Waldron and Getsy, but the screens were a lot better this past week with DJ Moore under Thomas Brown. Short side of the field, just they seemed more quicker in action and developing. But then you've got Andrew Van Ginkel. Like, you got to be careful, especially with the smaller Caleb, throwing that ball out there, because they're waiting for it. They know that you got to get it out quick against their defense. They're waiting for that. So whether it's him or Jonathan Greenard on the other side, and then they got dogs all over that defensive backfield. Josh Metellus is one of my favorite players that's not on the Bears.
Man, I remember Josh Metellus, man. Like, I was doing quality control for stats in Chicago back in the day. I used to do a whole bunch of Josh Metellus games from college.
Yeah, Michigan.
That's how long ago I've been watching him. That was actually when I first got my taste of Josh Allen, when he was in college, and I was like, this dude cannot hit the broadside of a barn, but man, he's something else. I remember there was like Duke Shelley. I saw Duke Shelley back in the day, Chicago Bears legend around that time. There was a lot of interesting players from back then.
Where did he go again? Shelley, was he, or he was in Oregon, was he?
No, he was Kansas?
K-State?
Kansas State, yeah.
Yeah, K-State. Another thing about Josh Allen, when Daboll left, and who Daboll I think is a great head coach or offensive coordinator, questionable head coach, but Daboll left. Then Ken Dorsey took over. Josh Allen did not look that great, by the way. Mm-hmm. He actually was dipping big time. Then they fired him and brought in Joe Brady. Joe Brady is number 2 currently on my list of head coaches I want for the Chicago Bears. Head coaches, which is crazy to think of now that I say that out loud about Joe Brady. But Joe Brady and Daboll, I think, are more to credit for Josh Allen's development than a Sean McDermott. Obviously, McDermott is the man.
You got to find, it's like you got to find those guys, and that was the thing. As I was giving that example, I'm really glad you brought that back to it, right? Because he had Brian Daboll there, and Brian Daboll really helped develop Josh Allen, and he's always going to have that feather in his cap, right? Regardless of what happens with Daniel Jones, look, in the end, you can't put lipstick on a pig. We all knew that he was bad, but anyway, like he develops Josh Allen, he leaves. And then, Ken Dorsey was a guy that everybody loved, right? Quarterback coach, and Josh Allen vouched for this guy. Like, I want him here, and he wasn't cut out for it. And then Joe Brady comes right on in, and then it's like the gravy train is right back on.
Right.
But look, just because it's like even the guys who are good at it miss from time to time.
Right.
But as long as you figure out how to get it right, get the solutions. That's the thing, man. You got to be able to find solutions as a coach. That's what half the job is. Like, you're just faced with problems constantly. Yeah. And sometimes you're not going to give the right answers to the problem as long as you eventually find the solution, though.
Well, I mean, how many times is Flus going to get an opportunity? I mean, he's run out. So that goes up to Ryan Poles. It's his responsibility. Nobody's talking about Ryan. Not enough people are talking about Ryan Poles right now.
Ryan Poles. I'm not going to front. I'm not going to front you, man. And this is me saying this as like, I think a bunch of the moves that Ryan Poles has made are really good. Obviously, the trade that could potentially change franchise history, right? You rebuilt the team with that Panthers pick, and you got Caleb Williams out of it. With the number 1 overall pick, with a solid roster on paper, but the offensive line that you put in front of him, nope. The head coach that you could have had a chance to get rid of and get an offensive coordinator, nope. And that head coach with a bunch of the hires that he made underneath him that have not worked out, guys that he's had to fire or let go of because they were incompetent, nope. Right. The fact that, whatever you feel about the previous quarterback, the fact that, especially that first year, you left him to die, basically. Yeah. And then I feel like the development his development was compromised because you had him with an offensive coordinator who sucked and now is unemployed.
Yeah.
Right. There's just a bunch of decisions that you're looking at here where at some point you could be like, oh, the players aren't executing. The coach isn't doing his job. Some point, we got to start looking at you too, bro.
Yeah, exactly. So, full disclosure, I was on the Fields bandwagon. I felt like what you're seeing in Pittsburgh right now with a great head coach in Tomlin, what they did there is they beefed up that offensive line. And I felt like if we could beef up the offensive line.
The funny thing is, though, the offensive line, especially early in the year, still wasn't that good.
Well, because you had a bunch of rookies.
Yeah.
And they're learning and developing, and they're panning out to be some of the best young players in the league.
They have, I'll tell you what, and again, this is somebody, so I watched Mason McCormick at the Shrine Bowl, and I was just like, oh, this guy's hateful. I love it.
Yeah.
And we went to the Steelers. I was like, you went to the Steelers. I was like, yep. That makes sense.
Zach Frazier should have been a Bear. Went to the Steelers.
And I think they just know how to coach him up down there. And again, like you look at some of the efficiency metrics for Justin Fields, and he's like even now, even though he hasn't played for several weeks, he's a perfectly average NFL quarterback. Mm-hmm. And again, that's not to say that he made all the right decisions.
They're winning games.
Or that, he didn't pass up throws and that he wasn't inaccurate at some points. But when you look at the grand total, it's a perfectly average NFL quarterback, which was better than he just was with the Bears because he had terrible coaching.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like all it took was him to get Arthur Smith. Right. And Arthur Smith and it's like, George Pickens and all of a sudden he looks kind of good. Look at that.
Yeah.
But again, it's like, I'm a fan of Justin Fields. I hope he has a nice long NFL career. I'm not going to be one of those people that advocates for, oh yeah, he should still be here, and they should have never traded him. And, it's like, screw Caleb Williams. No,
100%. No, I've moved on. I've moved on. I'm not gonna pretend like I wasn't on the Fields bandwagon. I love Caleb, and what I've seen from him, I'm super impressed by.
Yeah.
My Packer fan friends, they recognize Caleb Williams' skill set. That's not something that I've ever heard them say before. And it's because he's legit. And so I'm thrilled we have Caleb Williams. We just need to get the coaching right.
Yeah, and again, like I think this is like the last point, right? So we were talking about the Drake May thing, the difference between those two quarterbacks a couple weeks ago when they played, it was just coaching. It was really it. Drake May was working with far worse overall than what Caleb Williams was working with. He had like 3 undrafted dudes on that offensive line, like 1 rookie left guard, and all that stuff. Like you wouldn't working with no elite talent anywhere on that offense. And he looked so much better than Caleb Williams because of coaching.
Yeah.
Not because Caleb Williams can't read it. Always the funny thing everybody loves to say, oh, they can't read a defense. You don't even know what you're talking about, man.
Right.
But it's like, can't read defense. Like, you read defense just fine. Coaching is bad. And then you get Caleb Williams some better coaching, and whoa, look at that. He plays better.
Right.
Right. And, Justin Fields gets better coaching and he plays better.
Right.
Right. So there is a point to where the best players will find a way regardless. Like Justin Herbert has found a way to be good regardless of whomever is coaching him, even though you could look at it and be like, wow, he could have been even better than he is right now. But get Caleb Williams some real coaching, and then you're going to see why he was the number 1 overall pick and why people have been talking about him as a generational talent. We've seen the snippets. Now it's about the consistency. But again, until you get the consistency, this is not a serious operation.
Right.
It's like
100%, which is another argument for a Thomas Brown versus Ben Johnson or anyone else, is to give him some consistency,
continuity,
and continuity. So
Twill be interesting. I still don't see it, but you know what? It's one game. It's one game.
And what better stretch of games, competition levels, than Flores and his defense, arguably the Super Bowl favorite Detroit Lions twice.
You know they're gonna find a way to get one off the Lions or keep one close.
I mean,
they're gonna find a way to do it.
I don't know. It seems like a different Lions team even, but I'm with you. I hope so, think so. We can match up with them. We'll see. But 2 games against the Lions, 2 games against the Vikings, another game against the Packers, defending NFC champion 49ers, and then a solid Seahawks team on a Thursday night. Like that's what I'm saying. If Flus can win out, Thomas Brown can win out, Caleb Williams can win out, that will speak volumes.
Yeah, we got a lot of ifs, man. You know what? But you know what? If that happens, I'll happily just be like, you know what? Okay,
yeah.
Let's have a conversation. We got 7 games to make that happen. But you know what, Brian? I got to say, I have enjoyed doing this with you. I love your wholesome and infectious spirit. Cheers through the camera.
Cheers. Happy birthday.
Thank you so much. And thanks to all of you that stuck around and watched this and commiserated with us through the early parts when we were having hard times with this last loss. Thanks for those of y'all who laughed and stuck with it as I butchered the break. And thanks to all of you who listened to our thoughts on how to develop NFL quarterbacks properly. Looking forward to doing it again in the future, my man.
Yeah, you too. I'll be thinking of you when we see Flores send the kitchen sink and how Caleb dissects that defense. I think it could go well. Get Rome the ball, get Cole the ball.
Get your playmakers the ball. Just don't hold on to it.
Yeah.
That's all. Don't hold on to it. Get that thing out your hands. And you know what? It's like they can't sack you if you don't have the ball.
Yeah,
that's true. Saying. All right. Thanks to all of you and have a great night.
Happy birthday, bro. See ya.
Thank you.